Hey everyone, this is Mukesh Otwani once again from learn-automation.com. Today in this lecture we are going to talk about the different functions which is available in WebDriverIO in order to interact with elements. Okay, so in the last lecture we just discussed the first test, and there we just discussed two functions, I will say, which is setValue and click, right? But today in this lecture we'll talk about few more functions, like how to clear the values, how to check whether this element is clickable or not, is displayed or not, is enabled or not. We will also see how to capture the text, how to capture a specific attribute, how to capture the CSS properties. Okay, so again the concept will remain same. It is just instead of using these functions we'll use some other functions. So it's going to be very easy. So either we can modify this file, or maybe I can create a fresh file from the scratch so that we can discuss in detail. So I will just give this as elements commands, okay, or I will say elements.js file. So first thing that we need, as we discussed, that we need the describe, right? So this is coming from Mocha framework. So I will just type describe, and as you can see I'm getting this describe. Now I'm getting this auto suggestion, as in the last lecture I told you, right, you need to install one extension. But if you don't want this autocomplete, you just write describe, then pair of parentheses, then inside this write the title. I will say elements commands. Okay, then you can go with function, or you can use just an arrow function. So I'm writing one function here. Inside this now we need it block, right? Now let's have the it block. Okay, so you can have multiple it block, but as of now I will keep only one it block. So basically this will represent one test case. Okay, but the moment you have multiple it blocks, it will represent multiple test cases. So I can give this any name. So let me give this name as filling form. Okay, you can give any name. I'm just giving filling form. And now you can either use function or you can use arrow functions. Okay, now in order to get started we need browser, right? So we discussed that browser is a global object here. So I will just type browser, and you can see we're getting this as auto suggestion, which is coming from WebDriverIO. Now let me call one function called URL. Okay, and here I need to provide the URL which I want to automate, or I will say the application which I want to automate. So let's say you can take any application of your choice, because concept will remain same. So I will just pass this URL which we want to automate. Okay, so now let's explore the different functions that we have in browser object. Okay, so if I just want to see, let's go back here and let's go back to this browser. Okay, and you can see just now we have used something called URL, right? So this protocol binding to load the URL of the browser. Okay, and they have mentioned that if you are going with asynchronous mode or synchronous mode, how you can do that. So for asynchronous you can just use await here, so that we will use now. This is the first step, so you can omit this part, but let's use this await again here. Okay, and in order to make this as in async mode, as we have seen, that we will be using one keyword called async. Fine. Now in order to deal with let's say now you want to maximize or minimize. Okay, so you can see one search bar here, right? So you can type something called maximize. Okay, and you can see we are getting something called maximize window. Just click here, and you can see we have something called maximize window. And how you can do that, just type browser.maximize window. In a similar way, let's say if you want to minimize, so you can also search for minimize. Okay, let's search for, or you can just press Ctrl F and say minimize. You can see minimize window, maximize window. So let me call maximize window. So again I will say browser dot maximize window, as you can see, and again I will be using here called await. Fine. Now let's say if you want to give a pause. So if you are coming from Java background, then you must be familiar with something called thread.sleep, right? But here if you see, we have something called pause. So let's say you want to pause the execution for some specific amount of time, then yes, you can go with browser.pause. So sometimes it is required for 2 to 3 seconds, but if you have to pause for a longer period, then you can use something called wait for exist that we will cover in the upcoming lectures. But yeah, whenever you have to pause for some debugging purpose, or you want to see some execution, you can pause it. As you can see, we have to use browser.pause and we have to go with await again. So this is a pause. Again, I will write now. I will just mention here, but the moment we start interacting with web element, again we will be using this pause so that you can see some, I will say, usage of this. So for the timing, I will just give 3000, which is 3 seconds. Now let's continue and let me fill this form. Again, will not fill the complete form because I just want to show you some important functions that we have. Okay, so let's say I just inspected this guy, which is username. So as you can see, we have something called name, we have ID, we have type. So I can go with any locator. For the time being, I will just use XPath and I will just write that find the input tag which has ID called username, or you can go with CSS as well. So let's say if you just want to write CSS, just type input ID equal to the ID name. Can you see this? So in case if you're new to XPath and CSS, then I have 2 videos, or I will say 3 videos on this. So I will give you that link in the description of this video. You can go ahead and watch. So as of now, I have copied this CSS. So now I will be using something called $. Okay. Now if you want to see how $, works, then just go to API, and now you can just go to element, or in the browser itself you can find this $ command. So this is a shorter way to call find element. So if you don't want to go, if you just see some other documents as well, you will find browser.find element. So this is the shorter way of doing this, but both are doing the same thing. Instead of writing this, you can just write $ symbol and you can continue. We also have $. Okay, so in order to work with multiple web elements, you will be using $, which is equal to find elements. So this video we are focusing on one element, so I will just say $, and then I will just use the CSS that we have created. Right now I will be storing this into a variable so that I can call the different functions that we have. So again, I will use await, and let me store this into a variable called username. Okay, so now this username is representing this particular web element. Now I can do any activity on this. I can clear, I can type, I can click. So it depends on the nature of that web element. You need to call the respective function. So again, let's go back to the documentation and come back to element. Now you have something called addValue, and we also have something called setValue. So don't get confused. They are actually doing the same thing, but there's a minor difference. So let me show you. Can you see the setValue? So if I open the setValue, and if I open the addValue, so addValue will add the value to that particular I will say element. So setValue also does the same thing. The only thing setValue additional will do, it will clear the field. Okay, so let's say you have some forms which have some auto-filled values. You want to clear that values first and then you want to type, go with setValue. So you can see it does the same thing, but it clears before entering. But if you don't want to clear, you can go with addValue. So do not get confused. I've seen people are getting confused with addValue versus setValue. So let me use username and let me use setValue. Okay, and the value which I want to add, let's say admin. Again, we have to use await here. Now if you want to clear this field, okay, then we also have a separate function. So if you see, we have something called clear value. The moment you call this clear value, it will clear the field. So now I will use this browser.pause. So I will do one thing. First I will type something, then I will give a pause for 3 seconds, then I will simply clear the field. Okay, so await username dot clear value, and then again I will type. So again I will call this set values, and again I will give a pause of, let's say, 3 seconds, so that you can see. First it will type, then clear, then again it will type. Now there will be multiple scenarios in your test automation where you need to actually fetch the value that you have typed. Okay, so you want to cross check maybe. So let's say you typed admin, so it should be admin, it should not be admin 123 or some random or some extra digits or spaces are coming. So in order to get the value which is entered by set value, you can call something called get value as well. For example, so this is our web element, right, where we have entered. Now I will call something called get value. So this will return me the exact value which is entered. So this I will store into a variable. I will say value, and let me print this. Console.log, and we'll say the values added by set value is, I will say value added to username is, then I will just print this value. Fine. Now let's say you have some buttons, you have some web elements, and you want to just check whether it's clickable or not, enabled or not, displayed or not. Let's say, for example, I want to go with this particular login button, okay, or maybe this link or anything for that matter. And if you want to cross check whether they are enabled, displayed or clickable or not, so you can do that. For this, let me find this element. So this has a ID. So again I have I use the same CSS. It is just instead of previous ID I use the new ID, and you can see it is highlighting this login button. So let me use $, and then let me just paste the CSS that we have copied. Then let me store this into a variable, and before that I will use await, and let me store this into a variable called login button. Okay, and now if I want to just see some status, so first thing that I will do is await login button dot is clickable. So you can see we have something called is clickable. This will give me the status. I will say click status. In a similar way, I can have multiple functions, right? So instead of is clickable, if you just type is enabled, can you see we have this enabled function as well, which will just check whether this is enabled or not. In a similar fashion, we also have something called is displayed, which will tell me whether this particular web element is displayed or not, right? So one thing about this function, that when you say is clickable, internally it check it should be displayed, it should be enabled, right? Then only it will be clickable. So clickable is internally checking multiple things. And let me use this variable or change this variable, click status, I will say then enable status, and this I will say display status. So definitely in all these cases it will be true, right? But if you have certain web pages, there you have certain web elements which are not enabled, not displayed or not clickable, you will get false. So let me print them one by one. So first I will print this click status. In a similar fashion, let me also print enable and displayed. Yeah, and if you want just some text, let me add this. I will say clickable. Just a second. Yeah. Clickable, and just use comma here. This I will say enabled, comma here. In the same way, I will also check is this displayed here. Fine. Now let's run this, and then we will see some other function. So again, if I go back to WebDriverIO.config.js, okay, scroll down. Okay, come on, let me just see where is that. It is maybe on the top. Yes. So right now in the last one we just executed this. Now this time let's execute elements.js so that it should execute. And the command that we have to use, again, go back, go to the documentation, and you just need to run this, which is npx WebDriverIO run and that config file. So right now we are in the same directory, which is WebDriverIO tutorials. I will just paste here. So this time it should run Webelements.js file. So initially it should start, then it should maximize, then it should type, give a pause, then again clear the value, pause for 3 seconds, set the value again, then it will get the value that we have entered, and then we will interact with another web elements, and we are just checking 3 conditions. Okay, so I guess it got stuck, so let me run it again. So you can see now the browser is loading. It will load the URL, then it maximized, typed admin, then it cleared. Again it will wait for 3 seconds, type again. Okay, and you can see it passed here. And if you see, now we are getting the value added to username is admin. Yes, because of this function called getValue. In a similar fashion we call is clickable, is enabled, is displayed, and we are getting all the values. Okay, it's very easy guys. It is just you need to follow the documentation, call the respective function, and you should get the values. Okay, then based on the assertion you can put assertion. So let's say I want to put some assertion now. Okay, this is just the printing the values, right? But what if I want to have some assertions on this? So again, if I go back here to the documentation part, and if I go to API, you can go to expect, and here we go. Can you see this? This part we have seen in the last session, right? Browser matches. Now if you come here to element matches, so you can see to be displayed, to be existing, to be present, to be clickable, to be enabled, to be selected, to be checked. We also have this. So now I will do one thing. I will use for one, and the remaining 2 you can give a try. This is, you can consider as part of assignment. So I want to just make sure that this is clickable or not. So how we can do that? So just type here await. Okay, so let me show you this. I'm going to go for is clickable. So whatever element you have, okay, just use that element and just call to be clickable. So I can use this. Okay, and which element I want to go for? Let's say I want to go for this login button, right? So you need to give that web element. And so what we are doing, we are checking is this login button is clickable. If yes, it will pass, otherwise it will fail. Fine. In a similar way, let me quickly write the remaining 2 as well. You can, I will give you a few other things for the assignment. Second is for enabled. So this is for enabled, to be enabled. So yes, so you can go with this, copy this, and just call to be enabled. So basically the same login button we are checking is this enabled or not, and the last is displayed. So maybe I can copy again. So just like to be, okay, this is disabled. We need to see to be displayed. Yeah, to be displayed. So this is just for your understanding that how we are getting this, but this is the actual assertion that you have to do. Okay, that make sure they are enabled, clickable, displayed. And once you get the values, okay, so let's say you want to write a condition that if it is displayed, enabled, and clickable, then only do this. In that case, you can get the values from here and write your own if else conditions that we have seen in the JavaScript series, right? How to write if else conditions. So the same thing we are using now, but yeah, this is assertion that we are doing. Fair enough. Now let me also show you a very important, I will say, functions. Now if I go back to this login button again, you can see I have something called type, name, class, ID, value. So let's say I want to capture certain attributes. Okay, let's say I want to capture this value, which is login, and I want to verify this as well. We can do that. So anyways, we have this login button here, right, which is this. So this time I will say await. First just do this login button dot get attribute. Okay, now it will ask you which attribute you're looking for. So I can pass any attribute. I can pass ID, class, name, type. Let me pass that I'm looking for something called value, and let's use await, and let me store this value. I will say login button value, and let me print this value, console.log, and I'll say button text is login button value. Okay, so this will basically capture the attribute. But suppose if I go back and if I want to capture certain CSS properties, okay, so for this particular button, as you can see on the right hand side, we have a couple of CSS properties, right, that the border, width, height. So let's say I want to capture let's say the font size. So this is basically a CSS property. So if I want to capture this as well, you can do that. Just type again that web element and call get CSS property. I'm not going to show you documentation, guys, for each and everything, but if you are interested, just go back here, okay, and just search for get attribute. You can see we have here called get attribute. So it will get an attribute from the DOM element based on the attribute name, which will you specify, and you will get the syntax here. So in case if you follow the documentation, you will not struggle with the syntax. The one that we are calling now is get CSS property. Okay, so it will give you the CSS property from a DOM, and they have also given that if you want to quickly capture the background, font, border, margin, padding, you can just use this. And again, syntax for asynchronous and synchronous mode. Fine. So let me use this await, and I will also store this into a variable, and I will say login, copy this, I will say login button CSS values. And in order to put the assertion, go with the expect. Okay, as I showed you how to expect the values. So just type here, and I will say button font size is, it will give you 13. Okay, now apart from this, now let's say if I want to interact with this link. Okay, so if I want to capture this link text, which is forget your password, so now we can call something called getText. Now get value is different. Okay, get value is when you have typed something on the, I will say, input box, and if you want to capture, you will call get value. But if you want to capture the text, so this text can be help text, error message, some other text which is displayed, it can be a link. In that case, you will go with getText method, or I will say function. So let's say if I want this, so let me write one CSS or XPath where I will say, just a second, that find me a hyperlink which contains href. Okay, and this is the href value which we are looking for. So this is the XPath I'm using with contains method, or I will say contains function. So in case if you're new to XPath, again please visit the XPath section. Now again I will use $, and I will pass the XPath that we have generated, and now I will just call dot get text. As the name says, it will capture the text and will return us. So we'll do one thing, let's store this into a variable. I'll say link capture text. Okay, and let's print this again. I will say value captured from link is link captured value. Or link captured text. Yeah. Now if you want to verify, again you can use expect. So if I go ahead with expect, so let's do one thing. You can find some expect here. You can see one thing called to have value containing, right? So if you give certain web element and you want to verify that web element should have this value, you can use to have value containing. So I will just copy this, and for us the web element is link captured text, right? And what value we are looking for? Let's say we are looking for a value called forget your password, or let's say to forget. Okay, we just need to be a little careful because it is case sensitive. Okay, so before we execute this, let's add await here. And one thing that we need to keep in mind, guys, that I showed you in the last video, that you can't call these functions directly now, right? Because of this await. So you have to store this and then we have to call this. Fine. So let's do in this fashion. I will say this is my link, and then I will use await again, and I will say link dot get text. Now I will get the value, so I will store this now into a variable, and this variable name I will give this link captured text. Okay, if you go in that fashion, you will get one error called get text is not a function. So first we'll store this into a variable, then we are calling get text, again we get the string, and then we are doing this assertion. Fine, so let me run this. Okay, so here we go, started. So once the URL will launch, it will go to the next, then it will maximize, type, wait for 3 seconds, then clear, wait for 3 seconds again, type, and it will now call all the methods that we have, and it will close. Okay, so it failed now, so no problem. Let's see what exactly went wrong. So let's see the output first. So this is the previous output, that value added username is admin, true, true, true. Yeah, you can see now button text is login. So if you just come up, button text using get attribute is giving login. Then we call get cs property font size, so it is giving all these values, right? Then we are just capturing the text of the link, so which is this forget a password, right? Because we just said value captured from the link is, which is exactly this, and this is coming from the get text. Now it is failing at this point, and it says expected was forget, yes, but received undefined. Okay, so let's see, we are using text here. Okay, see guys, we did a very small mistake. So if I show you the documentation again, okay, we need to go to the expect. Yes, so in order to use this, you have to provide the element. Okay, what I did was I was giving the text value, so I should have given this link, not the capture. So now it will just check whether that link, which is a hyperlink, does it contain value called forget. If yes, it will pass. So this time I will just comment this because I don't need it. Let's run this little faster. Okay, anything else? Yeah, no. So let's run this once again, clear the previous one, or just execute directly. This time it should be a little faster. So it started, it will load, it will maximize, and it will be very fast this time, and it should end. Okay, so it failed, no problem, we'll identify what is the issue. But let's quickly see the output that we have captured. So this is the previous output, right? Clickable true, enabled to enabled is true, display true, and button text is login, and this is coming because we called get attribute value. Then we captured CSS property called font size, and we got 13. Then we are basically capturing the link text. So as you can see, the moment I say get text, it should capture, and we are storing here. So this is the text which is captured. Now it is failing at expect, okay, because of this guy. So you can see here, error, expect this particular web element to have property value containing forget but null. So basically we did a small mistake. Okay, the one which we are checking is to have value containing, so it is trying to find some value and then it is verifying. So we can also have something called text containing, because this is a link, right, and the link have text. So to have text containing, we can go with this. So instead of URL containing, we can go and see to have text containing, and this time it should be fine. So let's do one thing, clear this and run once again. One more 3 seconds is here. Let's run this again. Save this and run once again. So this time there should be no error. See guys, every time you get some error, identify what is the error and then fix it, because the error which you will be getting, that will give you the exact thing what you have to change. Okay, so the moment you start understanding the errors, you can fix your script very easily. And if you're not able to understand, just maybe you can Google the same error, or you can go with the documentation, you'll get the solution. Okay, so it loaded, yeah. And yes, it was too fast because there's no error as of now. It executed successfully. So all these values that we captured, apart from this is the link value, and now that expect also is failing. Fine. So guys, the last thing, now I showed you multiple expect, right? I showed you expect for this, I showed expect for link as well. Now you can give expect try for this get attribute value and get CSS property font size. You just need to verify these two things. Okay, as of now we have not added, so it's your task to put expect for these two. So I hope all is clear now. If you still have any doubt or any questions, let me know. So if you want, I can give you a quick recap. So what we did, basically we created our second JavaScript file, which is elements.js. Then we created one describe block, which is coming from Mocha. Then we created one it block, which is basically our test. Then we started our URL, and for each and every statement we are using await keyword. We are maximizing, finding the one username field, and once it is available, we are calling set value. We also have add value. Add value, set value does the same thing. It is just set value, clear the text also. Clear value will simply clear the text field. Set value will set the value again. We are capturing get values, which will capture the value. Then we're calling is clickable, is enabled, it is displayed, and then we added the expect for the same. Then we took another login button. From that button we captured the value, font size. Then we took third web element, which is a forget password link. Then we captured the text and we added expect. That's all for this video, guys. I hope you have enjoyed, and yes, if you get something new from this video, or if this video helped you in any manner, please support this channel by subscribing to this channel, share with your friends, colleagues, teammates, and I will see you in the next video. Have a nice day. Bye bye.